Texas fights back. Attorney General Ken Paxton sends a letter back over to Biden saying, we're not going to be complying with your demands. And in fact, we have some demands of our own. And so we're going to read through the letter here. You see, nice one sent to the General Counsel of the Department of Homeland Security. We've got some reaction from Ken Paxton himself. We're going to hear from Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas. He was on with Tucker Carlson. But here's the press release that came out from Texas saying, Texas is refusing Biden's demands. We are not going to be surrendering Shelby Park, and we are not ending border security measures. Now, there was a letter that came from Biden to Texas that says, you better, blah, 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 and he responded back to it, denying demands made by DHS. We're not going to be doing it. Texas is going to continue to secure the border, and he provided a list of counter demands. Now, for some background, on January 11th, the Texas Military Department did secure Shelby Park and protected the public, and then DHS flipped out and demanded that Texas cease and desist. You better let those illegal aliens into our country. Let them in fast. One of those like walking escalators, those people movers that you see at the airport, is basically what Border Patrol wants to put up. You know, walking across the border is a lot of work. So if you could install just one of those people movers like you see at the airport, things would go a lot faster for them. So they sent a letter back. Let's jump right into it. From Ken Paxton, Attorney General of the great state of Texas, sends the letter to Homeland, Jonathan Meyer, attorney. And Paxton from Texas says, hey, dear Homeland. All right, buddy boy, I've received your second demand letter dated on January 23rd, in which Homeland continues to complain about how TMD Texas military secured Shelby Park in the city of Eagle Pass. Now, in a previous response, I explained that your original letter misstates the facts in the law, and we are not surrendering to Texas's border to Biden's open border policies. Now, presumably, counselor, because you have no meaningful response to our letter, your latest letter abandons earlier factual assertions and you assert new ones and supplies even less of a legal basis for your demand than before. Paxton says, now, once again, I respectfully suggest that any time you might spend suing Texas should be redirected towards enforcing immigration laws that Congress already has on the books. Now, again, Homeland and Mayorkas, let's start with the facts. As I've already explained, the U.S. Border Patrol withdrew from Shelby Park last year and deliberately reduced its ability to respond to medical emergencies. Now, the tragic incident on January 12th, where someone drowned that you once tried to pin on Texas, had already occurred well before your agency's officers arrived at the gate. Now, conspicuously, they showed up at the gate without any equipment even to perform an emergency rescue because they were there just for a photo op and a PR stunt. And the supposed memorandum of agreement that you say exists between Customs and Border Patrol and the city of Eagle Pass was never approved by Texas as required by the state's constitution. So don't say that you've got authority under the 2015 agreement, because you don't. Now, your latest letter to me, Homeland, disputes none of this because you can't. Instead, you now claim that Texas has somehow restricted access to land owned by the federal government. But your first demand letter acknowledged, that Shelby Park is municipal land owned by the city of Eagle Pass and not the United States. So which is it? Question mark. If this newfound allegation of federal property rights were true, then Texas would of course remove any obstructions to federal land pursuant to a lawful court order. So if you can actually prove that this is your land, we'll do it. But this state will continue to respect another state's property rights, even though the federal government refuses to do so. So in other words, if that's your land, we'll give it to you because we care about property rights, unlike you, who allow our property to be ransacked by illegal aliens. Now, they say after conducting a diligent search in the arbitrarily short period of time that you allotted for this rebuttal, it appears, Homeland, that there are serious reasons to question both of your new claims of federal property rights that you just made up. First, you say that the United States acquired fee simple title, which is a type of property rights title. Property law, you've got different labels for ownership of title. Fee simple is basically the ultimate. If you got fee simple title, it's like, it's clearly mine. Nobody can contest it. And you have fee simple subject to other restrictions and other conditions on the property that will limit your ability to transfer title because it's contingent upon some other things. Property law is very complicated, actually a lot of fun, but they're saying, you say that the United States has like root ownership, number one ownership to certain parcels in the Shelby Park area. So they kind of split up. That's ours. That's ours. But the map that you sent to us shows that most of the tracts that you reference fall outside the perimeter area that was actually secured by Texas at Shelby Park. So the stuff you're claiming that you have is yours. It's not even what we're talking about. So, okay. But with respect to parcels that you identified in your maps that are actually in the vicinity of the park, publicly available records suggest that the United States does not even purport to own what your latest letter claims. What? For example, your home-cooked map, which I really wish we could see, attached to your letter insinuates that the United States has title to every parcel on the west side of Ryan Street, which borders Shelby Park. Based on our necessarily cursory review, because we have no time, current records from Maverick County don't support your claim. In fact, by February 15, 2024, Homeland, we, Texas, hereby demands that your agency supply the following documents and information to this office. Here's what we want: official plat maps and deeds demonstrating the precise parcels that you think you own, and your explanation of how exactly Texas officials are preventing access to those parcels by federal agents. And second, Homeland, you also say that the United States acquired a perpetual easement. So it's a right of usage. So for example, you own the property, but somebody else was traveling across the property, or maybe you own this big plot of land, but somebody has an easement, which means they can access their property because it's behind your property. And so you can't really prohibit them from using that. It's an easement, but it's a perpetual easement because it's a road. Saying here that the United States has this, that they have permission to use it, and they got it back in 2018. Now, Paxton says, excuse me, no. What I said last week about the 2015 MOA that doesn't exist, I'm going to say it again about your latest claim. Texas never approved the transaction, and our Constitution says we have to do that. Article 4, Section 10, your federal agency cannot have something that was not the city's to give. And so you can read the document if you want, it's at this link. But even if the 2015 were somehow valid, you are not seeking access consistent with its terms. The non-exclusive easement, even if it was valid, has been attached for your convenience. You should read it. Its express purpose, the purpose, was to allow maintenance of a road, see, exactly right, along the river, and the right to trim trees, or other obstacles within the roadway. That's it. Not go cut wire and allow illegal aliens to pour into the country. Now, elsewhere, the 2018 easement prohibits the United States from making any permanent improvements other than a roadway without written city approval. If your agency wishes to help municipal officials with tree trimming and road maintenance chores, I think that we would appreciate that help. Yeah, come trim these trees. Border Patrol, thanks for fixing the road. Don't you dare cut that border wire and let these people in. The 2018 easement, however, nowhere contemplates at all allowing the federal government to deploy infrastructure that Biden will be using to wave thousands of illegal aliens into the park that will continue to be used and enjoyed for recreation events. By February 15th, Homeland, Texas hereby demands that your agency supply the following documents and information back to us: any written approval from the city of Eagle Pass or the state of Texas consenting to allow your agents to erect the open border infrastructure that you want in your letter, and two, your explanation of where Congress has empowered your federal agency, where's the law, to pursue this scheme, notwithstanding any statutory provisions to the contrary. Now, Paxton says, without clarifying the metes and bounds of the federal government's alleged, quote, property rights, and how its lawful access to the property has been in any way impeded, the state cannot meaningfully assess your demand. But to the extent that your agency, here it comes, demands access in order to once again transform Shelby Park into unofficial and unlawful port of entry, your request is hereby denied. And to be clear, your latest letter points to no law at all supporting the agency's right to do that. In an unexplained reference to Border Patrol's responsibilities and authorities, quote, you parrot statutory language about the need to, quote, patrol the border, but you, unsurprisingly, omit the statutory language that your agency continues to publicly disregard. Border Patrol is tasked with patrolling the border. What's the next sequence of words? To prevent the illegal entry of aliens. Hello, you can't forget the back half of the sentence. Patrolling the border to what? Create a glide path for people to come in here? No, it's to prevent. That's from US Code. It's already on the books. Instead, you fixate on a recent order from the Supreme Court. Now, as you know, that unsigned order supports and supplied no rationale for vacating a Fifth Circuit injunction. It may be that the Supreme Court was misled by allegations that came from your agency and which you repeated in a letter to our office that are not true. But in any event, the court's order certainly said nothing about access to Shelby Park, which even the federal government's lawyers acknowledged is not presented in that ongoing litigation. Ken Paxton says, as I said before, this office will continue to defend Texas's efforts to protect its southern border against every effort by the Biden administration to undermine the state's constitutional right of self-defense. And you, lawyer, should advise your clients to join us in those efforts by doing their job at Homeland and following the law. Sincerely, Ken Paxton, Attorney General of Texas. Love the letter. Absolutely coming with the heat towards Homeland, and rightfully so. Now, remember, Ken Paxton was on the ropes there for a while. We're glad that he is still there in Texas, being able to stand up and fight against the Biden administration with this force. And it's a property rights issue now, which is where this is devolving, and that is a lot of fun. And they've done their homework. They've done their due diligence. They see it's our land. Get the heck out of here. So we've got a lot of developments happening here. Ken Paxton talked about this. He was explaining their position. Here's what that sounded like.
It's beginning to look like that Joe Biden is basically, drawing a line in the sand, and he's saying, the feds are going to come marching into Texas and rip down your razor wire, and Governor Abbott saying we're just going to put it right back up again.
I support the governor. He's going to stand. I talked to him today for a little while, and we talked about this very issue, and I guarantee you he's going to stand strong. He'll keep putting razor wire up. We'll keep blocking the border. We'll keep doing everything that we need to do to protect our state, despite the fact that this Supreme Court ruling was so wrong and has such a detrimental effect on our state and our country.
Amazing. So saying that the governor is going to be standing strong. In fact, we have a clip of the governor. He was on with Tucker Carlson, and he was saying that we are ready for a fight.
If the administration declares that it plans to federalize the National Guard of the state of Texas, your National Guard, what will be your response?
Well, first, I'll be shocked. That would be a boneheaded move on his part, total disaster. For one, as you might imagine, we are prepared in the event that that unlikely event does occur to make sure that we will be able to continue exactly what we've been doing over the past month, and that is building these barriers, whether it be the concertina wire or other anti-climb border barriers, whatever we've been building. The Biden administration is now trying to attack us because of it, and we will continue to do exactly what we're doing to expand our denial of illegal entry into the state of Texas.
With state employees, I assume, not with National Guard, but can you envision a scenario in which you would put armed state employees on the border instead of the National Guard of Texas?
We do have other armed state employees on the border as we speak right this minute, and that's the Texas Department of Public Safety, as well as other law enforcement officers, as well as National Guard from other states. And you can be assured there will be more National Guard from other states and more law enforcement officers within the state of Texas and other states. And Tucker, I just signed a new law in the state of Texas that will go into effect on March the 5th that authorizes any law enforcement officer in the state of Texas to be able to arrest anybody coming across the border illegally.
Have you spoken to the president or anyone from the Biden White House about what appears to be an imminent collision?
I have not, to be clear. I have spoken to the president about the border. I met him on a tarmac in El Paso and talked to him directly about what was going on. I handed him a letter that had in it immediate solutions he could take that would immediately secure the border without the need of any new law to be passed. Despite the fact that I handed him altogether 8 different letters, he has refused to ever respond. My point in telling you that, we have laid down the precursor of what's called Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution to show that we have been invaded and we have demanded support from the president to safeguard our state, and they have refused to do so 8 times, and that authorized me to declare an invasion under Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution to make sure that Texas is going to be able to use every tool in our arsenal to defend our state.
Of the couple of dozen Republican-led states who've pledged support for you, how many do you think would send National Guard to Texas?
I'll be shocked and disappointed if almost all of them do not send. There have been about 10 so far that have sent National Guard or other law enforcement. They now are joined together with us, and this is a fight for the future of America, and they all know it. And so I believe that they will all be in on December.
Amazing. So great questions, great responses from Texas. It sounds like he's very fortified, like he's thought this through. Yeah, okay, they can nationalize the Guard. And there's some question about why he didn't do this before. And I like here how he basically explained that. He said, well, I asked 8 times for help. I delivered a letter. I talked to him specifically about it. They keep rejecting us. So I literally have no choice. Now I can declare an invasion. And he's got this nice record that has been etched in because he's been trying to get the Biden administration to do something about it. So they sound strong, man. They sound resolved and firm. We're loving that for our friends in the great state of Texas because it impacts the rest of us. Now, the White House is kind of responding to some of this. Here is some criticism lobbed their direction, and Karine Jean-Pierre was explaining the White House's take on the border because Texas, as you can see in the Chiron, is now adding razor wire, saying they're ignoring a Supreme Court ruling, which is not true at all, CNN. They're allowing them, I guess, to cut the wire if they have access to the land, if it's their property. So essentially what the Supreme Court ruling did, which was just a paragraph, allowed them to do what they were already doing, but they just don't have access to it anymore. A bunch of issues here, but I wouldn't say Texas is ignoring the Supreme Court ruling. My question is, has Homeland decided to do anything about it? But here is Karine.
Democrats are saying the president needs to federalize the Texas National Guard.
So look,
is that something that could happen?
I mean, look, I'll say this. The Border Patrol agents are now, as you said, allowed to cut through the wire because of what the Supreme Court has laid out. It's unfortunate that we had to go there. It's unfortunate that there is a governor in Texas, Governor Abbott, who has politicized this issue of what's happening on the border. And it's not making people's lives safer. It's actually making it harder for law enforcement at the border to do their job. And And so we have been very clear.
What is their job? It's to prevent the invasion, not to make a welcome party.
We want to make sure we get something done at the border. That's why we've been having these conversations with Senate Republicans and Democrats for the past several weeks to come up with a bipartisan agreement to deal with the border.
That is what they're going to keep parroting over and over and over again. They need to just do their job, which evidently is allowing illegals in. So little hesitation, little skepticism on the National Guard being federalized. We saw that from her. Like, well, I don't really want to do that. So instead, they strike back with sanctions against Texas. And this stuff is pretty problematic in my view. You see, here's a full statement from the White House. They just, in response, on January 26, announced a pause on natural gas exports, liquefied natural gas exports. Obviously, this is going to hit Texas hard. And why else would they be doing this? To hurt Texas, literally. So here is the statement from Joe. He says, in every corner of the country, people are suffering from climate change. Historic hurricanes and floods are wiping out homes, businesses, and houses of worship. Wildfires are destroying whole neighborhoods. Record temperatures, blah, blah, blah. From day one, our administration has been useless. More action is needed. My administration is announcing today a temporary pause on pending decisions of liquefied natural gas exports, with the exception of unanticipated and immediate national security emergencies. During this period, we will take a hard look at the impacts of LNG, America's energy security, and this pause on new approval sees the climate crisis for what it is, the existential threat of our time. Now, while MAGA Republicans deny the urgency of the climate crisis, condemning America to a dangerous future, we're not going to cede to special interests. We will heed the calls of young people and frontline communities who are using their voices. As America's always done, we'll lead. Now, to me, this just feels like one of the most weakest fake statements you've ever seen. It's a fake because, right? We know why they want to hit this, because it's going to hit Texas and some of the other states where this stuff is produced and exported. So if you want to challenge the feds, here's what the feds can do to you. What's the reason for this? Climate change? Climate change. That's the reason. Out of nowhere, so they just decide to go hit liquid natural gas? No. This is an economic attack on Texas. They know it, and I'm sure Texas knows it. So here's some reaction to that. We have Joe talking about this. They put out a 15-second statement from this idiot, because that's all they can squeeze out of him. This is from his official account. My administration will continue to take action to meet the urgency of the climate crisis. Here's a 17-second video, because it's all they can muster from this dude.
We have to fight for clean air in our communities and to lower costs for American families, including energy costs. Today's pause on new natural gas export approvals recognizes the climate crisis for what it is, the existential threat of our time. It's a threat, a serious threat.
It's a threat. It's a serious threat. It's an existential threat of our time. What's going to happen? And what is this new pause going to do? Is it going to reduce the global temperature by 5 degrees? Like, what is the consequence of this? I know what the consequence is. It's going to economically suppress Texas and all of the other LNG states, many of which are very likely red. That's the point. And so they just wrap it up in climate change. Do we have like a climate emergency that's happening like tomorrow? Or is this just more of that fake generic emergency language? Of course, it's the latter. So here is now Karine responding to this, and she doesn't even know what agency's in charge. Here's what she sounds like.
The Biden-Harris administration announced a temporary pause on pending decisions on exports of liquefied natural gas to certain countries until the Department of Education can update the underlying assessments.
Department of Education is now in charge of our natural gas exports. Okay, so this is what's happening in Texas. Obviously, they are standing strong, standing firm. Ken Paxton, AG of Texas, says, you are hereby demanded to give us what we want by February 15th. We're securing the border. Deal with it.